What's up? We're going to be making a Wellington. I'm going to show you the crucial steps on how to make a basic Wellington. And we're going to start it off with a beef tenderloin. So I already butchered the whole tenderloin. I didn't record it, my bad. I can do a video on the breakdown of the tenderloin, but for now I have it right here. So basically you want to pat away all the excess blood. Use a paper towel. Paper towel is your best friend. Salt and pepper. We're going to take this and we're going to season this. The salt needs time to actually penetrate the actual flesh itself. So we're going to leave it like this. What it's going to do is going to change the muscle proteins on the inside so it'll actually absorb and retain more moisture when it's actually cooked. We're going to keep this in the fridge, unwrapped, so it can dry out a little bit in the fridge while we work on everything else. And you can do this the day before too. Now, we're going to work on our bouquet, which is the mushroom. These are mini bella or creminis. They are the brown tops. These are just smaller portabellos. If you want to use portabellos, you can. So the first method of breaking down the mushrooms is by hand. I rough chop them first, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep chopping them until they become really tiny little pellets. I'm not going to lie, this method is very tedious, but it does yield a very consistent nice mouthfeel once everything is all said and done. Some even argue that this is a preferred method over the way that I'm going to show you next, which is with the food processor. So if you have a food processor, I highly recommend that you use it. It's a lot easier and it's a lot faster. With mine, it's really small, so I had to cut the mushrooms in half. And when you start blending, be sure to pulse. Don't just turn on the food processor and let it go. You want nice little chunky bits. If you just let it go, it's going to turn to mush, which is not a desirable texture or mouthfeel that you want for your Wellington. You want a little bit of a mushroom bite. You can see me tilting the food processor around. This is just me trying to get the big mushroom bits to the bottom of the processor so I don't overwork the bottom. Once you process your mushrooms, they should look a little bit like this. And we're ready to move on to the next step. Pull your tenderloin out of the fridge. We're going to season it with salt, pepper, garlic powder, and hit it with a little bit of oil. I'm using avocado oil. Here's a fun kitchen tip. If you splash about a teaspoon of water in your pan, you'll know that it's ready to sear when the water looks like it's Team 1000 from Terminator 2. This is called the Lyndon Frost effect. So now we're going to sear our beef on super high heat. I add oil afterwards to make sure the oil doesn't burn beforehand. And we're going to sear this on all sides super hard until it gets a nice brown crust. Each side should be no more than a minute and a half. The idea is a brown crust on the outside and super raw on the inside. Don't forget to sear the ends too, top and bottom. Now set it aside to rest and do not waste that fond that's in the pan. We're going to go straight in with our mushrooms and we're going to turn the heat down to a nice medium low. As the mushrooms cook, we're going to brush our tenderloin with Dijon mustard. Now the Dijon mustard is actually an essential part of the Wellington. Mustard itself acts as a binder, which is going to bind the mushrooms to the meat when we roll up the Wellington. Now pay attention to the mushrooms. They're going to be really wet and the objective is to cook them out until all of the water is gone. And at this point, this is where I'm going to add my bouquet of thyme. I'm going to arm a pan to cook out my shallots and my garlic. Yes, you could have started the mushroom mix with the onions and garlic first, but I'm a big fan of using the moisture from the mushrooms to deglaze the pan to get all of the beef fond flavor into the mushroom mix. So I like to add dried mushroom powder to my mushroom mix to intensify the mushroom flavor. Once the shallots and the garlic have some color to them, I'm going to add them to the mix and I'm going to deglaze that pan with sherry and throw that into the mix. Be sure to taste and adjust your seasoning accordingly, and the mushrooms are ready when they have no moisture left. You're going to line a sheet tray with parchment paper and then awkwardly move your tripod over. We're going to get the mushrooms onto the tray and spread it out in a nice thin layer. Don't forget to remove the thyme. Now let this chill out and then stick it in the fridge once it stops steaming. Once the mushrooms have cooled down, we're going to bunch it all together and we're going to put it on a tray that's lined with paper towel. And then we're going to try to spread it out as thin as we can and then put another layer of paper towel on top. The reason why we're using paper towel is to make sure that the mushrooms are really dry. So we want to get rid of as much moisture as we can. This will ensure us that our Wellington will not be soggy on the bottom. For me, this is a very crucial step. So now we're going to clean down and we're going to set up our station to wrap the Wellington. So I lay down my saran wrap side by side because my saran wrap is small. And right at the very front, in the middle, I actually crimp the middle so that way it becomes one big saran wrap. This way I have a lot of wiggle room when it comes time to roll up the Wellington. So now we're going to start laying out our prosciutto. We're going to do it piece by piece, and it's really important that the edges overlap one another. This is going to make sure that it stays nice and tight. Here I'm just double checking the size of my tenderloin to double check how much prosciutto I should actually lay down. You always want a little bit of excess so it can wrap around the sides. It's time to add our mushroom layer. You can flip that right on, and again I'm using the tenderloin to measure how far I want to spread the mushroom mix so it'll fit. It's important not to spread the mushrooms right to the edge of the prosciutto. You need that little excess so it can seal around the mushroom mix. And now it's time for the scariest part. Lay the piece of tenderloin on the mushroom mix and carefully start lifting the front of the saran wrap up, making sure that it's sealed as one big piece. And we're gonna slowly fold over until the top prosciutto touches the bottom prosciutto. And now it's a matter of just tucking in the top and rolling it as if it were a burrito. So you really want to tuck that top edge underneath, and then you're gonna seal it with the extra prosciutto that's on the bottom to make it a roll. Now we're gonna bring it back so we can see, and it's very important not to squeeze way too much. If you squeeze way too much, the mushroom mix is gonna start coming out from the sides. You just want it tight enough so everything can just start sealing together. Now we're gonna start pressing from the center outwards with your hands, but don't squeeze so hard that the mushroom mix starts to come out from the sides. This is more of a light pressing just to make sure to squeeze out any air pockets that might be present inside of the roll. This will ensure a very tight roll. Now you can just keep rolling it forward as a way to twist the edges so it compacts everything all together. And we're gonna put that back into the fridge. It's puff pastry time. So I like to use Tenderflake just because it's a lot easier. It's the brand that I like to use. Tenderflake, please sponsor me. Please excuse the camera angle. I was not watching my camera. And yes, I do keep my flour in my empty protein jug. So we're gonna roll out the sheet into a rectangle. I like to put the rolling pin in the center and roll outwards up and then down. Flip and repeat. Again, measure with the tenderloin to make sure that the sheet is going to be big enough. Get an egg wash ready with a brush and an egg yolk. When you're ready, cut the twisty ends off and then carefully peel back the saran wrap as to not ruin the wrapped prosciutto, and carefully place it on the puff pastry. We're going to triple check the size of the puff pastry and we're going to start egg washing. Egg wash all the sides, but the most important part is that top front one that's going to do the main seal. When you're ready, grab the puff pastry that's closest to you, roll it over to make that seal. And we're going to crimp the sides as if it were a Christmas present, cutting away all the extra if there's too much, and we're gonna seal the deal with more egg wash as if it were glue. We're gonna get it on parchment paper and it's gonna go back in the fridge so the puff pastry can firm up. Now we're gonna tackle the fancy netting that goes on top. This is super extra and not necessary, but let's be honest, if you're gonna be making a Wellington from scratch, you might as well just do the fancy netting. So roll out the second puff pastry sheet, same as the first one, except this time we're gonna cut little tiny holes, and this is how we're gonna do it. Set up the rolling pin vertical as if it's gonna be a ruler and cut a row of holes, and you're gonna be rolling across about 1 centimeter every time, and you're gonna cut holes in between the previous holes so they're almost like alternating. And believe me when I say these do not have to be perfect. Trust me, it will look good. Now this has to go back into the fridge because by now it's gonna be really soft and we need it to be firm in order to put it on top of the Wellington properly. So let it chill for at least 10 minutes. The next step is to egg wash the entire Wellington, and you're gonna take that netting and carefully drape it across the Wellington. Don't worry, there's gonna be a little bit of wiggle room where you can sort of stretch the netting out to make those holes look a little bit bigger. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take a paring knife and you're gonna crimp around the bottom edges and cut away all of the excess puff pastry. And now you're simply just gonna egg wash the entire thing. Now this is an industry secret. You can put it back in the fridge for another 5 to 10 minutes, and we're gonna be putting on a second coat of egg wash to give it a darker golden crust. If you wanna be really extra, you can take sprigs of rosemary and line them up in the little tiny holes like what I'm doing. We're gonna give it one final coating of egg wash, season it with a little bit of salt on top, and we're gonna pop it in the oven for about 40 minutes at 450 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're using a convection oven, which is the one with a fan, bake it at 425 instead. Check the temperature with the digital thermometer. You're aiming for 120 Fahrenheit. Let it rest for at least 15 minutes. During this time, the temperature will rise to about 125 to 130, which will be a perfect medium rare. And that's it. Slice it up as thick as you want and serve it up on a fancy plate, and that's pretty much how you make a Wellington. If you have any questions or concerns about the recipe, feel free to leave a comment or DM me on Instagram. I'm very responsive. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I plan on posting a lot more videos in 2021. Okay, bye!